All right, 6 o'clock, call the meeting to order. All members are present, student rep is present. So there was one addition to the agenda, you all saw that? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the agenda with the addition?
So, second.
And motion, Gerald second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes. Is there any, I didn't hear any public comment. Let's go to consent agenda. Janelle?
Okay. Cheryl, do you want to call out any bills or from previous review?
I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I did see that the Leisure Time Tours was paid. That's the band trip coming up. We're all excited about.
Yeah.
Band and choir. That's going to be exciting for them, for us too. We get to, they'll probably live stream like they did last time. I love that.
Fine.
That was perfect. And the final payment on the irrigation equipment, which we use this year, that was a great addition.
Yeah, I think A Day, it was a nice kind of celebration of a lot of people coming together and bringing really kind of a dream to reality. So that is complete and it's been a great addition to that program.
And I did want to mention that both of these items were covered by fundraising. The school does not pay for these out of our funds.
Correct. Okay. Otherwise, from a personnel perspective, everything is pretty straightforward with hires. We've got our Schedule C kind of finalized. And then you'll see a few resignations. Again, we've got some coaches hired and some resignations for coaches. So we'll have some positions to be filling. Donations, I will call out the donations for October. A couple of things, we did receive some a donation for busing for our 3rd grade field trip. We always appreciate that. Transportation does add up, so when we have focused contributions like that, it's always appreciated. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the tailgating revenue, but also part of that opportunity was created because the American Legion did donate $500 to put on the tailgating event and the soft cross country activities, and then our booster club did activities before the volleyball game. So it was just a great contribution. And then the boys and girls sports fall fundraiser, so that the football team gets half of that money, and then the other half goes to the booster club to distribute amongst the girls sports throughout as the need comes out throughout the year. So a couple of the donations that I just wanted to call out that are recognized in October. Beyond that, I'd stand for any questions.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. We'll move on.
All right.
Communication items.
So for the administrative report, I'm actually going to pause and let our student representative go first. That's why I highlighted it. So I did that because I know you have to excuse yourself. So if you wouldn't mind, give us what's going on amongst the student body.
It's pretty slow right now. For student council, we're gearing up to start up the blood drive that will be happening in December. For SAD, we're just doing a lot of activities at the elementary school. I think we go once a month, try and do crafts with at least every grade this year. For NHS, we're doing activities at the elementary school as well. I think we're going end this week and next week. And then we're also starting to fundraise for the early childhood playground. I know that we're doing something with the Legion. Gerald's helping us out with that. And then for sports, tonight there's a football playoff game in Holdingford. And then on Friday, there's the volleyball playoff game at home.
Great.
That's all I have.
Any questions for a student representative? Otherwise, I do appreciate you coming, and I know that it had other commitments, so thank you. I appreciate that. All right.
Good night.
Oh, I have to go back a minute. That consent agenda, was that for all the hires and everything?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to abstain, I guess.
That's what I was asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
And
Just change that in the minutes. And abstentions.
It's totally on me.
oh, That's all right. Okay. Administrative report, what I have for you, just a couple of things. And as I mentioned, I was gonna kind of call this out a little bit. If last year, we had attempted to have a tailgating event before the football game, and it was an absolutely miserable day. It was rainy, it was windy, and it was just a bust. And so we were kind of nervous about, okay, are we going to give this another whirl? We thought, can't have two awful games in a row. And it was an absolute, just a joy. People were out and laughing and happy, and just a number of community members throughout that whole week. As I mentioned, cross country, there were goodies and giveaways, again, provided by the Legion. We really did seek for donations because we didn't know what would come out of just free will donations. And we ended up with $761 that's going into our Bulldog Booster, or not the Booster Club, the Bulldog Activity accounts. And so that's really just a huge dollar amount. And thank you for that. Thank you for, people didn't have to do that. And we're just so grateful that they did. So just a huge thank you to showing up, supporting, and really for those cash donations. Looking back at this month, we did have School Custodian Day. A couple of things I just want to call out that our custodians have been working on. If you walk through the buildings, you're going to start noticing the difference in lighting. Our lights, we've had a lot of LED changes, and it is a visible difference. So that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of kind of navigating around, especially on the workshop day last Wednesday. The custodians were all here during the day to kind of get things done. And so it's just been a nice concerted effort. So thank you for the work that they've put in and just preparing our buildings. National Fire Prevention Week. We've had a number of fire drills just to kind of make sure that we're on par and we're ready for that. We did have our fire inspection this week as well. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we've had our fire inspection this year. One was at the elementary school a week and a half ago, and that, whatever. But that's always nice too, to have our fire marshal in and give us kind of a perspective and kind of see if there's things that we need to be aware of. And Ken's done a nice job following up with him over the last couple of weeks or last couple of days as well. World Day of Bullying Prevention. If you've walked into the elementary or the district office doors, you've probably seen kind of the kindness and the words of support written on the sidewalks. It's just been a nice way to remind kids of how to be kind, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with others. It really is stemming from that kind of the anti-bullying focus, and we really spend a lot of time just trying to be proactive. And then we also have School Bus Safety Week this month. So I just wanted to call out some of the things that happened with the activities and with our recognition days. And then I would stand for any questions about the administrative report. I did link in the revenues and expenditures. So if you kind of take a look, just again for people, I'm going to cast this just because it's been probably a couple of months since I've shared this. So I want to just remind people where to go and where to look. Okay, so on the tabs, if you take a look, you're going to see, so along the bottom is where this is going to be the running tally from the beginning of the year through the end of the year. And you're going to see the budget. And then when the audit is finalized in December, you'll see this change to, instead of unaudited revenue, it'll be at audited revenue. But this is just kind of the running tally, so you can see where our numbers are. And the green is really kind of what I look at is where a thing is right now in comparison to where they were last year. Okay. So the revenues you've got each of the funds that come in, and they're broken out. Again, it's just different ways of slicing the same revenue pie. Okay. And then in our expenditures, so I'm going to stop sharing that one. I'm going to grab the expenditures tab. Share that. Okay, and again, just kind of taking a look, reminder, each tab at the bottom is going to be a new month. So as we look at September, this is the breakdown by object series. So how people are paid or expenses are coded, whether you have supplies, fuel, gas, purchase service, salaries and wages. And then as you scroll down the page, you can again slice that pie in a different way to take a look at the expenditures throughout the district. And again, this document has been used in the same format. I think this is our probably third fiscal year. So it's kind of a nice way to just compare it year over year and see where we're at as the fiscal year progresses. So unless I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to call out, but I would stand for any questions that any board members have about either the expenditures or the revenues.
Questions? Okay, thank you for your report. Then we move on in committee. Have any committees need to report?
Meet and confirm met on October 3rd. And it was really interesting because we didn't just talk about the calendar. Actually, we didn't talk about the calendar. We talked about concerns and how the start of the year went for the teachers, and they were able to talk about their concerns. And we discussed conferences and possibly changing formats a bit, or that they like the formats, or, I mean, it was a great discussion. And, you know, what we could do to change things, what would make things better? What do we like? What we don't like? And it was just, I loved it. It was great. We got to hear some concerns from the teachers, and we'll be able to address them better before issues come up. And the teachers don't have to come one-on-one to an administrator to voice a concern. We can get together and talk about it. I loved it. It was perfect. Janelle, did you have any more?
No, I think it was a productive conversation, and it really is. It was proactive, which really, in my opinion, is the intent of meet and confer.
It was a great change.
Thank you. The others?
Just, you see it down at the end of this, you have the policy committee meeting coming up this week, Thursday. So.
Yep.
So be ready for those policies, update policies.
Okay. Then we move on to new business, starting with educational data review.
So I mentioned at our work session that typically we would have had this kind of at that moment in time. But what we did is we took some time to do all the benchmarking, and then I'll bring today, I'll invite up the team to kind of walk through what we know about where our students are today, and then what we're doing with the information that we have. So I'm going to just turn it over to the teams. We have, you guys can come on up and introduce yourselves and walk through, and I will pull up your presentation. Do you want to be the driver? Sure. Okay. Can I share it quick? Yep. And then I'm going to just sit back and enjoy.
Okay. Cassie Akerson, elementary principal.
Marie Grothe, one of the MTSS teachers.
Maria Rasmussen, MTSS teacher.
Jesse Rasmussen, secondary principal.
MTSS,
Multi-tiered system of supports.
I think most people listening have no idea what you.
We're getting there.
RTI, response to intervention. So,
And prior to that, it used to be Title I.
I'll be the driver. Okay.
So why are we here? The mission of the Paynesville area schools is to prepare students with the academic, social, and personal skills to succeed in their career and community. That is our why. And so tonight we're going to talk about how do we achieve that mission. So I wanted to start off with that, with our why. Here you are, Bruce. Important abbreviations that you will hear throughout the presentation. Starting off with ELA. That is the abbreviation for English Language Arts. So anytime that we are talking English Language Arts standards, requirements, it's tied to the READ Act as well. Anything reading curriculum, if you will, related. MCA, Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment, that is the comprehensive assessment provided by the state of Minnesota that our students participate in each spring, starting in grades 3 all the way up to 10th grade. We've got MTSS, you will hear, the multi-tiered systems of support. And I will show you some visuals that will help clarify what do those support systems look like. And then SOR, the science of reading. How are we honing in on our instructional strategies to meet the science of reading, and how do we get learners to become proficient readers through those strategies? So those are some of the common abbreviations that you will hear throughout tonight, because you're right, there are a lot. And for anybody listening or tuning in, it gets to be a lot, and it is our everyday language that we use. Last year, I shared this visual with you all, and it just really depicts the layers that we have in education. And we could even add a federal layer, followed by the state, district, our sites, down to the classroom, and down to the individual learner. And we're going to talk about where are we at as a district on all of those levels, and how do we hone in to the individual. The wires in the back are the systems of education. All the things, all the wires required to provide our students with the best education. And so our job as educators is to untangle those wires and make sure that there aren't any shorts, that they're all connected, they're working, and that we have the best systems possible here at Paynesville Area Schools. So within our systems, we need to identify what is it that we want our students to know and be able to do. And this is really driven by our academic standards. So the ELA standards, the English Language Arts standards, also with our social emotional skills. We talk about SEL. What are the behaviors of students that we want them to be able to do and know? And then how will we know that our students possess those skills and that knowledge? And oftentimes we'll use different forms of assessments to gauge student understanding. And once we gather that data, how do we respond to that data when students don't know those skills or dispositions? And how will we respond when students know what it is that we are wanting them to know? And so these 4 guiding questions guide the work that we do in a multi-tiered system of support. So this is a visual that really depicts MTSS, multi-tiered. Everybody in the green, tier 1, has access to tier 1 instruction. Oftentimes you'll hear that is your classroom instruction. That is standards-based. All students have access to tier 1 instruction. And then from there, we monitor how are students doing with that tier 1 instruction. Are they getting it and they're understanding it? Then we move to the right, to that blue side. We might choose to extend and enrich to the right in tier 2 and tier 3. But what happens when students don't understand or aren't getting the skills yet? Then we move to the left, and that's a tier 2 and sometimes a tier 3. That's going to be more remedial, additional time and support to hone in on the skills that are maybe missing at that point in time. So those are the multi-tiered supports that all students have access to. And you've heard Mr. Rasmussen and myself talk about power half hour and lead time. And this is where this comes into play, to the tier 2 and 3 on the right and the tier 2 and 3 on the left, in addition to tier 1 instruction. So I'm going to circle back to that here later on. When we collect student data and we learn where our students are at, we look at what are the facts? What do we see? What do we know? What is the data telling us? And then we look at interpretations and we might pose questions. I wonder why this group of data is this, or we take this interpretation as that. And then we talk about what does this mean for us as educators, and how do we respond by allocating our time, people, right, and resources. We look at what are the next steps. And you've seen us as a district take those next steps based on the data that we are collecting and using. Okay.
So if we look at types of assessments we give here, we don't rely on a single assessment. We use lots of different types of tools of assessment to help us understand where students are and what our next moves are in order to help students. And so we have screener assessments, which will let us know where students are at and whether they are meeting benchmarks. But that doesn't give us the whole picture. So then we need to go further, and we have diagnostic assessments, which will then give us a better look at which skills the students are missing. And so we can tailor instruction to meet their needs to address the root causes. And a lot of times you'll hear letters or other sorts of skills that we use to conduct diagnostic assessments. Then inside classrooms, we're using formative assessments. These are checks that we do while students are learning. So when a teacher comes up and asks a student, how do they understand this, or what do they know from what they're doing? That's a type of formative real-time assessment that teachers are giving, quizzes, projects, et cetera, stuff like that. And then one piece that we also use is we use these summative assessments, and these inform us after the learning's happened, things like unit tests, and then MCAs are an example of a large-scale summative assessment. So I wanted to walk through some of the data here, and there is a lot on this chart. And so it would take hours for us to go through and kind of talk about this chart. And so I wanted to present it to you and then give you a chance to dig through this on your own. But what this shows us is this is our MCA reading data, and this is a longitudinal data. So it'll track year to year. So you'll see grade 3, district, and state. So you can see from every year from 2012 on how grade 3 did district compared to state. But the other thing that allows us to do is it allows you to track grades or groups of students. So you can see the yellow line there tracks that grade of students all the way down until they take their grade 10 assessment. Okay, and the light blue line, or the kind of when you look at the bottom of grade 10, that was last year's 10th grade students. So we can trace them all the way back and look at their MCA scores all the way back until 3rd grade. So a lot of data here, very informative, and lots to delve into there. So.
Can I ask a question as we go?
Sure.
So we had the COVID bit, and then we also had the opting out of the MCAs. And if I understand correctly, the opting out gives you like a 0. So when I look at some of this, it looks like it's just scaled. We just took a step to lower numbers. I'm assuming that's the contributing factor, potentially COVID and.
Those are certainly some of the things that we've talked about administratively, and that's been some of the conversation that we've had is what are the factors that are contributing to dips in scores? We did see when opting out became a more prominent option, we did see more families say, I'm not going to take the test. I'm not going to have my child take the test. We did see, we've worked hard to help parents understand the implication that it, and parents do have the choice, but we're just trying to, I think, explain the purpose of the why and how we use this information and how this impacts our district as a rating, right? Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot about when people go to the Minnesota report card, this is what they're seeing. And is that this is one snapshot in time. And we're going to talk about some of the other pieces. But the reason that we've kept this graph in here is because I think the board has seen this over a number of years with the color coding to kind of track groups of students by grade level. So I think it's helpful just to have in front of you, but those are the questions, Bruce, that we administratively talk through and then think about, as Cassie said, now what do we do with that?
Well, I look at all the efforts that are going in to drill down to student, putting a concentration on the students themselves. And we didn't have that before. I never saw it.
Right.
And it's like we're drilling down, yet some of those other factors that we don't have a total control of probably are affecting these numbers.
So with that data, when we have the opt-out, we as a district, or you as a district, you don't go in and then try to data mine out those outliers.
We have not.
You just take that whole thing, okay. And I'm perfectly fine with that. It's based on, excuse me, based on what you said, Janelle, if this is the way the state's looking at us, then this is the way I guess we need to look at ourselves and see what we need to do. I'm fine with that.
And this next chart is very similar to the last chart. This looks at longitudinal data for our MCA math. Again, we can track each grade as we go down the chart, or we can track it longitudinally as we go across the chart. So lots of good data here that sort of, it helps us inform decision making. So
And if anybody was curious about where this comes from, this link at the bottom will get you there. Okay.
those are all linked to, they all go back to the Minnesota report card.
See, I look at the 22, 23, 23, 24. That shows me the drilling down that you are doing to try and track the students. Would you say that's a decent interpretation?
And the other thing to note, sorry to go back, the MCA assessment has evolved, right? So the MCA assessment students are taking this spring is different than the MCA test they took in 2016. So it's not in a sense, it's not 100% comparable because the standards evolve and change as well. So that's another piece to consider when analyzing the data.
I guess I remember that now. It seemed like if we started doing really well, they changed the test and just drop everybody down a category and.
Yeah, and MDE has even said, so that 1920 COVID line, that we really should not be comparing that previous data to our data now because of the disruption in learning. So basically, if you look at 2021, that's our new baseline data. That 2021 is our new baseline.
I gotcha.
And so what are we doing from that point on, right? And what are we, how are we?
So before
deciding
then,
that?
we didn't have the opt-out. We had them changing the test like on a regular basis and all of the factors. I gotcha.
I like the idea of them changing the test. I know it's something that you folks have to deal with and look at some things. Because that means that our school district is looking at how am I actually teaching a student versus am I just going to teach them the test if I know what it is year to year.
So these are pulled off the Minnesota report card. These are our MCA scores. So this is our elementary MCA math trend. The current year is furthest to the right, and you'll see three graphs. You'll see the light blue line as the building, the elementary school. The dark blue line is that's the state, and then the green line is the Paynesville School District. So the left graph is the MCA math, and then the right graph is the elementary MCA reading. That would be 3 through 5 math and 3 through 5 reading. Again, same sort of format. Again, we can see the state line and the building line. This would be a grade 5 MCA science scores or trends. These are the secondary trends. Again, the graphs appear the same. And so newest year off to the right, and then we have district, state, and building data. And then finally, MCA science. This is taken in 10th grade.
Last year when we presented this data, I talked about the READ Act, how that has been through legislation and it's still evolving. And there's been different requirements that we are to do. And one of the things that I wanted to call out specifically was the screening requirements, which we are required to screen fall, winter, and spring within the first 6 weeks of school and the last 6 weeks of school. They've recently, like within months, have indicated that we also need to screen now in the winter. That was our past practice, so that wasn't a change for us. In addition to screening, they've altered some of the requirements, some of the subtests for screening. So we've adjusted, which I think most was our practice, but we were just making sure that we were in alignment to those changes. But another area that the READ Act calls out is the intervention piece. So we screen students fall, winter, spring, and then we respond to their data with intervention, whether that's extending or whether that's remedial. Couple of things that the READ Act calls out, and this is straight from the READ Act website. I just took 2 snips that I wanted you to see, that any student not meeting the target benchmark in the fall, winter, spring, we are required to do a remedial intervention. And progress monitor. So check how is the intervention working? Is the student making growth and making gains? So that's one thing that's been called out. The other piece that's been called out in the bottom snip is talking about a personal learning plan. And so this is something that our MTSS team has worked hard to develop this year in conjunction with lead time and power half hour as a response to data time. And so we were able to provide all students, kindergarten up through 8th grade, with a personal learning plan that indicates where each child scored on our fall screening and how we are responding to that score. And so families were made aware through that personal learning plan what we're doing, whether extending or remedial. We also identified on that personal learning plan, what are the interventions, how often those interventions are happening, and how we are tracking progress. So that was new to our families this year. Whereas past practice, students who received remedial services through MTSS only received kind of that personal learning plan. Now, all students not meeting benchmark receive that. And at the secondary, all students receive that personal learning plan. So that's exciting for us. That too, I want to be crystal clear, that is evolving. So as MDE is evolving that, and you'll see verbiage like strongly encouraged to provide, we took that as we are doing it. And some of that looser language right now, that later on MDE, I would imagine, would tighten up that language and make that a requirement. So I just want the board to know and families to know that our personal learning plans will be evolving as we learn more from MDE with their requirements. The other piece with that personal learning plan is we are partnering with parents. So parents at conference time sat with teachers and went through that. But also we provided at-home strategies that families can work on with students in that area that they are working on. So that homeschool connection piece.
I like that. Because it's really a report card divided 3 ways. The student, the one that's the teacher that's doing it, and then also our school district is doing all that data together. I like that.
It's a work in progress. It took a lot of work kind of upfront, and we have not only our MTSS team conducting interventions, but what's required in the READ Act is that any teacher providing an intervention needs to be letters trained. we know where we're sitting with our training and letters, which is huge for us. So we've got classroom teachers also providing intervention, whereas other districts, they might be very limited to who's providing that intervention, when we might have a lot of students requiring intervention and this many people who are eligible to give the intervention. We have students who require intervention. We have staff who are trained to give that intervention, which is exciting. All
Just
right.
out of curiosity, what do you see statewide? A lot of the districts are a lot larger than us. And I know we're kind of fortunate in a way of having a smaller student body because we have more one-on-one. And our teachers are more cognizant of each student. We don't have an excess of students fluctuating in and out all of the time. Do you see statewide that this is all being covered the same as in Paynesville or similar?
Not yet, right? And I think as you look at MDE's timeline of pieces, like even just the letters training, how they're putting that training required years out, right? So the staff for us who have not completed that training have X amount of time to complete that, where other districts, they're starting at 0, right? Staff trained and are working towards that. Looking at student data across other districts, they might have a lot of students, limited people to provide that intervention. I think it's really dependent on district size and what the needs of students are. But I don't know if anybody else has 2 cents for that question.
Thank you.
I just think this is all fantastic. I was one of those kids that got missed. So reading was it. At the end of first grade, I didn't know how to read. My mother didn't know about it till then. Now, she wasn't very happy when she found out about it, and I had to attend summer school for 6 years to get me back on track. But we didn't have that kind of thing. I'm not aware that the instructor actually knew, wasn't in at that time, we weren't looking for it. But it's a big deal. And I know guys that were like me, didn't really know much about the girls back then, so didn't pay much attention. Well, the guys around me, it was kind of a tough goal. And if you got behind, it was tough to catch up. But I had my mother, she was gonna make sure that it didn't affect me. So unhappy during the summer.
So the READ Act is driven by local assessments, which is our FastBridge. So we looked at MCA data. Now we're going to transition to our local assessments, which is FastBridge, which is the data we use to drive our intervention. So with that, I'll turn it over.
So FastBridge is a data collection program, which is used not just in our district, but in many districts around the nation. So you not only have our district data collected within this, but it's also compared normatively, compared to peers all across the United States. For our purposes, we have collected the data and we compare them to the benchmark. So what the benchmark is that target score. What research shows and tells us where students should be at X amount of grade level, right? So unlike the colored graph that we had for MCAs, each vertical line is not the same grade, okay? So that's those students in that timeline who were in kindergarten. So when you look at that kindergarten name at the top, the first one there is from what would technically be 2021 spring. FastBridge reports, they keep that same year all year. So for example, in what we know as being 2025 spring next year, it'll actually be recorded as 2024. They just keep the year the same. So I wanted to list that caveat because it gets a little confusing if you don't know that. So speaking of growth, I was really excited when I saw the elementary data come in. So if you look at kindergarten and if you look at their 23 spring score, which is the second one from the left, it's 78%, okay? And if we want to talk about growth or maintaining growth, if you look at the next one for first grade, That's the same grade level that will be under the star one for the fall, way on the right. And if you see that, they were 78% of them met benchmark in the spring, which is amazing. That's like almost a picture perfect data collection number that we would want to see, that tier one is working with most of our students within the grade level. And then that's when we can push in and really hone in our services on those students who need it, which is a smaller number than the whole, right? So if you look at 78%, they came in this year in the fall at 58%. It's a 20% drop, but at the same time, they're kindergarten to first grade. These two grades have many subtests that go along with this data. So for example, in kindergarten, they start with letter names, letter sounds, concepts of print, which means, do they understand how a book operates? Do they know how to turn the page in a book? What a letter is, what a number is, what a sentence is, what direction do you read that sentence, right? And then all the way to first grade in the fall, where they're expected to read nonsense words, read sentences, read sight words, and be able to split a word apart according to its sound. So for example, if I said the word cat, can you say k, at, and identify the sounds in that word? So a lot of the skills have changed. I'm excited to see where we go in the winter, to see how much growth they make, to see where that number goes. So if we go to the next one, it gets a lot easier to read. I got really excited when I saw this one because over the summer in grades 2 through 5 for their A reading test, which is their comprehension, they have to read the text on the screen and then answer a comprehension question for it. So starting in second grade, our last year second graders in the spring, 65% of them met last spring. They came in this fall, 71% meeting benchmark. Okay, so there was virtually no summer loss number numerically there. If you look at the next one over to the 71% in third grade in the spring and jump to how they did this fall in fourth grade, they were able to maintain again 71%. And then when you look at the last year's fourth graders in the spring, they were at 73% and they jumped to 81% in the fall. So that data tells me that our instruction, all the hard work that we put into letters training, implementing that, in addition with the new curriculum that the elementary is going to do, I am really excited to see what those numbers are going to be at. And it tells me that the information that students are learning, it's sinking in and it's becoming a permanent part of their brain. Thank you.
Speak as a parent as well as anything else. For my family, and I can't speak for all families in the district, but I feel that I had conversations with a few of our acquaintances and friends. This data has been great for us too, because I feel like it also changed our perspective of what our kids are gonna do in the summer months. You know what I mean? And seeing data lost from my student from spring to fall a couple of years ago, we were like, okay, we can't, like, we don't want to see that loss. I'm competitive, or whatever. It's not like we want to see our kids have no bloom, but just we don't want to see that loss. So I feel like that the more this data comes around like that too, it does at least help benefit the education of parents in what your child is doing when they're not in school. Again, can't speak for every family district, but if that is a larger percentage of families in district, then that's a win. So the data, I love that fact as a parent, so.
That's a great perspective and add in.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
This next piece of data, this is what is pulled for the READ Act, looking at fluency in grades 2 through 8, whereas kinder and first, the READ Act pulls the early reading assessments. So here's our data for fluency.
So for fluency, you're going to see very similar trends. There's a little bit more of a drop here, but again, when you think of comprehension, Comprehension goes all the way to the conversational level, right, for A reading. Because when someone talks to you, you are needing to comprehend what they're saying. So comprehension can be practiced not only with reading and understanding what you're reading, but also just conversationally with adults, with other kids, and being able to understand what they say. So really, that can be practiced off the cuff all the time, anywhere, right? Where fluency is really directing our attention to how many words are students able to read in 1 minute, how many words read correctly, I should say. And that might not be as much of a practice skill in the summer, right? I mean, we try to as parents, families get busy in the summer, but also it's just not as natural as discussing or having conversations. Even so, in saying that, the fluency scores were similar and there weren't many fallbacks from last summer either. So if we look at second grade, our students who were in second grade last spring, they were at 67% in the spring. And we look at them coming in the fall, they were at 65%. That's only a 2% drop. That's pretty incredible. The third graders last year at 74% came in at 58% this fall. Is it a drop? Yep, but it's not really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge drop. And then our last year fourth graders who are fifth graders this year left at 72% meeting that benchmark and came in at 75% meeting that benchmark. So they actually went up. I do want to draw attention real quick just to second grade that came in this fall. It is at 44%. That may seem like a low number because we want, the goal is to have 80% or between 70 and 80% be at benchmark. I will say though, when our second graders this year were in kindergarten, they came in that fall at 29% meeting benchmark. That is incredible growth from 29% to 44% to come in the fall. So I'm really excited to see what our Power Half Hour, what the interventions and our system is going to bring for that grade this year to keep building them up.
Fourth grade this year, we had a large influx of fourth graders, correct? So I'm taking it, well, I guess I'm reading what you said, as far as that drop, is that influx what caused some of that? So it's really just in the noise as far as getting those students that may not have experienced this wherever they had come from.
Correct.
To get into this, yeah. All
They
right.
might not have utilized this program at their previous school.
Gotcha.
And exactly. So unfortunately, it'd be great if that data could travel with them, right? If the previous district had FastBridge, if we could just quick, input that from the cloud, right? That would be a dream world. That would be amazing. But we don't have that facet either. So yeah, that can definitely be played into account there too.
And so I like that approach because it's not a knee-jerk reaction to saying, boy, something really bad has happened. So we need to circle the wagons again. Just let it start playing out and see where you're at. I like that approach.
And I think, I don't know if Mr. Rasmussen or someone had pointed out before, when we look at percentages in our size of a district, 2 students, sorry, Mr. Rasmussen, you speak to that because.
So with a grade level less than 100%, less than 100 students, right? If we're talking 70 students, that means each student is worth equals more than a 1.5%. So that means 2 students equals 3%. So we can have big swings in our data, much more so than large districts who may have 700 kids in that grade. They're going to have much more consistent numbers where we can have larger swings because of the low numbers. But
That was beautifully said. Thank you.
And then this is the same information just with math. So in kindergarten and first grade, if that's that separate component, right, they have many subtests that make this composite score. Similar though, from the spring of 2024 technically, when our first graders were in kindergarten, 74% met. And then coming in this fall, they were at 68% who met, which is fantastic. Not very much less at all. A math is the umbrella of math. right? So A-math includes data analysis and probability. It includes geometry. It includes algebra. It includes all of the components of math. And this assessment is actually read aloud to them, so that if a student were to struggle with reading, that wouldn't necessarily be a hindrance in this assessment because it's read aloud to them, and it can be repeatedly read aloud to them as many times as they need for understanding. So again, if we take a look at that data, our last year's second graders left at 58% and they came in at 61%. Our last year's third graders left at 76%, came in at 70%. And our last year's fourth graders left at 72% and came in at 70%. So the largest loss was only 6%. And when you think about numbers, that's only 3 to 4 students. That's pretty darn amazing.
All right, next up, we've got grade 6. Sure. All right, so at the middle school, we have 6 through 10 doing A reading. And A reading is just like A math, the overall comprehension, vocabulary. They read that themselves. It's different in at the secondary or with the older kids. And so as they're going through, they answer those questions, and then it gives us the comprehension score. So looking at the 6th graders, we'll just follow with the way Ms. Grothy did it. Last year in the spring, the 6th graders had 71%, and they came in at 69%. Last year's 7th graders were at 62% and came in at 47%. And the 8th graders, 65%, came in at 65%. 9th graders, 55%, came in at 57%. I'm trying to decide how to move forward with this. We were talking about this, I could talk for 5 hours just about this slide in and of itself. And so A reading gives us an idea about where we are going. And the great thing about the secondary, all of the classes contribute to this. So it's not just ELA, and obviously that's the same at the elementary too, but you have one teacher teaching all of those subjects versus here, we get to work as a team, and it's ELA, but then it's also social studies and it's also science. And all of our classes are really honing in on their specific vocabulary and content information and teaching to really help those students and build that. Our scores, our goal obviously is to progressively continue to get better as we move up, and our high schoolers with the 9th and 10th graders aren't always huge fans that they're still scooped in and they still are taking these tests in high school. But it's really nice to be able to see longitudinally how they're doing over time, and so it's nice to have that data. So our CBMR, our fluency, we sit down with the students, and Mr. Spanier and I listen to all of the students read 3 passages, and then it takes the average score of those 3 passages, and it gives us words per minute correct. And we know that words per minute correct has a very high correlation, or the CBMR has a very high correlation to comprehension. So usually, if a student can read quickly and decode words quickly, that means they're going to be able to comprehend it quickly. For students who read super fast, but they can't comprehend, those students usually are already getting services to really support that comprehension piece. And then vice versa. Sometimes we have really, really slow readers, but they understand everything that they're reading. And so this over time, if we look at our 6th graders, we have last spring, 59% of them met benchmark or met the target for our CDMR. And then we came in at 56%. 7th grade last year, 70% met benchmark. And then we came in at 61%.
shout out to the 7th graders who are now 8th graders. We spent every day working on fluency because the entire grade was really struggled with it. And so we did a tier 1 intervention in our classroom, and they learned how to read fluently, and they did awesome with that. So the fact that we ended the year at 70% just made my heart happy. Okay, and then we have A math, which is comparable to A reading. Again, it's just the math side of things. And 6th grade last spring, 75%, coming in at 73% this fall. 7th grade last year, 64%, coming in at 51% this year. 8th grade, 69%, coming in at 69%. 9th grade, 70%, coming in at 70%.
So one thing I just want to kind of point out is, so if you look at just comprehensively at our MCA scores in math, they're considerably lower than this data, right? This is a better reflection of the skills and the components of understanding that our students have, which is, I think, one of the really important and powerful tools of both the drilling into the reading and the math, okay? So I think that's why this is so much more important, to be able to kind of step back and look at those targeted skills that we have to be, where do we have to really focus and target? And we can do it more immediately versus that one shot. And then, but it's also, you're gonna notice a marked difference between those scores from MCAs to this. So.
My low battery popped up on my computer,
Okay.
so that tells me that we're gonna pick up our pace a little bit so we don't run out of battery. So this just goes back to, how do we respond to that data? And that FastBridge data is what we use to determine all students getting tier 1, and then how do we respond to the left remedial, to the right extending. So when we talk about our multi-tiered system of support, what does that look like? I think that was you. Sorry.
Yep, that's okay. So this year we were able to get Benchmark Advanced. That is our new ELA curriculum. So that is going to play a part in the data that we're going to be collecting after this year and moving forward. That'll be a really key component. Most of our elementary teachers have been trained in letters, which is the science of reading. It's a foundational, and letters is not a program. It is I am lacking on the word. It's you know what I'm talking about? Comprehensive, like structure, thank you. Yes, structure. It's a structure, not a program. So it really focuses on the strategies and skills and how to teach those strategies and skills to the greatest benefit of the student when it comes to the 5 pillars of literacy: phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Our ELA department at the elementary level, that's pretty much everyone. Everybody is teaching reading similar to the secondary, but again, different, because everyone is teaching that core reading class. And then we are going through and discussing pulling interventions for those different components of literacy. So our goal is for 80% of our students to meet tier 1 instruction, so that the rest of our students can be into an intervention group, really specifically catered to exactly their needs, whether it be for fluency, for phonics, or phonological awareness, which is that listening component. So then what we do is we take all this data that we've given you, and we take a look at it across on a spreadsheet. And we group all the students according to their needs. So for example, even the students that are way on the right on the extension component part of that diamond, right? They're getting specific interventions for what they scored in their data and what they need. So we helped group the students and assigned interventions for each one, all the way from the blue end to the red end of that diamond. So part of our MTSS team, I am part of the MTSS team at the elementary. All three of us are, which is really amazing. Ms. Rasmussen gets to spend half days every day, which has made a gigantic difference. Thank you so, so very much. Having her every day is wonderful. And then another core part of our team is Mr. Jacoby. And so myself and Mr. Jacoby are in the elementary all day long, utilizing our time with Power Half Hour time. And then what we call Tier 3, which is, so Power Half Hour is in addition to their reading time. Tier 3 is an extra additional time of instruction because that student or those students need that really small group instruction that's really focused on what component of reading they may really be struggling with. Oh, and we have 3 amazing paraprofessionals who have been key components to our training, instruction, and fantastic interventions.
Okay, so at the secondary, we have Tier 1. All of our teachers are either letters trained over here or they participated in our full letters training, which was, we focused on vocabulary and comprehension with all of the other teachers. And so I have facilitated letters training with Marie before. And so what I did is I took what we learned from that and made it applicable to secondary teachers. And so they were getting the science of reading for their level that's appropriate for their level. So all of our teachers are working in that. Our ELA department, we have worked on our standards off and on, back and forth. I feel like we do that all the time, constantly relook at that. And that is something that in the future we would love to look at curriculum for our ELA department over here as well. We have a really strong, great curriculum that's new at the elementary, but then to be able to pop it up here as well and have that for the kiddos would be great. And then all of the other departments have had that training to know how to use really effective vocabulary and comprehension strategies within their classroom. And then the additional support. So yay, this year we have lead time. We are very, very excited about it. So our staff is kind of split into 2 parties. One party is high school advisors, and then one half is middle school lead time teachers. And so we have 20 teachers at the secondary who are leading interventions for students who may have never led an intervention before, but we have too many kids for 2 MTSS people to be able to pull and service all of our students who are falling below benchmark. And so all of the teachers came together. It has been a really, really, really amazing thing to see. They have their interventions. They have read through their interventions. They have talked with each other about their interventions. They have started, when was our start date?
The 7th of October-ish.
Somewhere a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And so they have been working with students for the past couple of weeks to do these interventions, and it has been amazing to walk down the hallways and hear all of the teachers doing that, and that all students are getting something at their level. So we have kids who are doing letter sounds all the way to kids who are reading a higher level text and having reciprocal teaching, deep conversations about text and asking each other questions and leading that themselves. Really, really cool to see.
Great, so just a couple other data points up here, right? Again, MCA data and FAFSA data is not the only data point that we get. We have some graphs here that we, I know Janelle showed us before when we looked at the SLED system. But again, other things that we can take a look at is, are our students taking rigorous courses? And you can see by this graph, clearly we're well above the state in taking rigorous courses. And then our graduation requirements, again, we're well above the state as far as graduation rates. So a lot of things that we have as a school district that we can be proud of on top of MCA scores and FastBridge scores. So
going back to our why,
going back to our mission here at Paynesville Area Schools. And we just shared with you a lot about how we aim to achieve our mission. That was a lot of information and data, and we encourage you to connect with Superintendent Bullard and let us know if you have specific questions that we can circle back to. We're happy to have that deeper conversation.
I happen to think this is the most important thing that I have for being on the school board, because the students are what it's all about. We have a lot of things we deal with. With all the things you deal with, the things that come to the board, this is interesting to me. And I happen to think, for one, we are on the right trajectory here. It's just, it took a few years for all of it to click, but you can see it in the numbers. It is showing up, so I am extremely happy personally on this one. Good job, everybody.
Great work, team.
There's three components I like about this, and Jesse started it off by talking about the why. Having done analysis in my past life, asking those why questions and digging down to a root cause is instrumental in establishing what you've done here. I like that why component. I like the fact that you have brought in this check and adjust period. So midway through, you're going back and taking a look at where you started at, what's working, what isn't, doing some adjustments, and then moving on. I like that. And the other thing I like, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, as far as not taking that knee-jerk reaction, but really the cause and effect, doing some type of fishbowl of cause and effect. So look at the data that came up about the seventh graders coming in. It looked like numbers were low. You folks aren't talking about the fact, or from an administrative side, we've got to go fix something. Start letting those things play out, have an understanding. What are seventh graders like? And I was a seventh grader at one time. I had a little bit of an attitude. So you take a look at that and have that, So when you start taking a look at the cause and effect side of it, if the cause is because reaction, you can really derail where those students are at. So I like the way that you guys are doing that. They can look at the stuff. And so like I said, those are the three components I like: the whys, the check and adjust, and the way you're doing your causal analysis on it. So, fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll move on to the assurance of compliance. Make sure we're complying.
I know. So, and this is now going to be a little bit more just a traditional kind of walkthrough. I will pass this so people are able to see. Every year we do have to submit and sign a statement of assurance. Really, this is going to have all of the requirements that we as a district have to comply with. You're going to see individuals identified. These are then reported on the Department of Ed. This recognizes our requirement to be mandated reporters. We are all mandated reporters, and we have been trained as part of our annual training. You're going to see each of the other I'm not going to walk through every one of them, but these are a lot of the statutes and the rules and the laws that when we have policy, they're reflected back to a lot of this work. And we're making the assurance that we are complying with these areas of the various laws, whether it's Americans with Disabilities, whether it's the Minnesota Human Rights Act, all of those components. So this is just an annual authorization and commitment that we are complying with these procedures.
Okay. Any questions? We'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thomas moves and seconded by Bruce to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We approve it. Now we go on to the Stearns County Family Services Collaborative Joint Powers Agreement.
Okay, this is another annual authorization. The Stearns County Family Services Joint Powers Agreement is an agreement that allows us to be part of a collaborative. I believe that Rachel is on the collaborative, represents the board. This is where we generate some money that helps to offset the cost of our co-located mental health service provider. We have a number of service providers who do what are called random moments to understand how our, the complexity of our student body that helps generate some funding for us. And this joint powers agreement allows us to be part of that.
Any questions? We have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thomas seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is approved. Seniority list.
Okay, the seniority lists have all been posted. They've been sent out. There have not been any revisions and changes, so my recommendation would be to approve the seniority lists as presented.
So moved.
Second, Carol, somebody else.
It's Rachel.
Rachel got it, okay. Rachel got it second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it passes. Minnesota State High School League form a grant application, Form
So-
A grant.
Yep, so this is a resolution to allow us to submit an application for a grant to help offset student activity costs. This is also an annual resolution, so this will require an introduction and to the resolution, and then it is a roll call vote.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution of school board supporting Form A application to Minnesota State High School League Foundation.
Second.
Second, Bruce. Okay, we'll take a roll call.
Bruce.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Carol.
Aye.
Ron.
Aye. It passes. Memorandum of Agreement, certifying staff e-learning action.
This is truly just a brought forward from last year. The teachers union reviewed the memorandum, and the only change to the memorandum is the dates. And hopefully we need to use it as often as we did last year. So it's just a looking for approval.
Any
I'll make a
questions?
motion.
Like motion by Bruce to pass.
Second.
Second by Cheryl. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Brings us up to upcoming meetings. Policies meeting. What day is that? Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah. 3:30.
One thing to call out, the November 12th work session is in the afternoon. It's at 1:30. That's when our student body is here. And we changed that from having December with the student body. So just make sure that you have that time noted for November 12th.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Gerald, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.